Hello and welcome to the Economic Times Cutting Chai Stories, an initiative by ET Edge. I am Ashwani Mishra, Editor Technology at ET Insights, bringing to you yet another episode of these stories over a cup of chai. I have been joined by a very special guest who has had an illustrious corporate journey spanning over 3 decades. In 1992, he started his career at Accenture Consulting in India. In the year 1995, he moved to the UAE, joining Emirates Airlines as a senior IT manager, where he worked for 23 years. In September 2018, he deboarded the Gulf carrier and moved to a diversified global company, Dubai Holding, as the group CTO. He is a passionate advocate of being digital as opposed to just doing digital. He holds 2 master's degrees, MBA and MCA, and has studied in premium global and Indian institutions such as the London Business School, UK, St. Gallen, Switzerland, Bradford University, UK, and NIT Trichy, India, and Delhi University. It's an absolute delight to have Neetan Chopra, who in his current role is the Chief Digital and Information Officer at India's largest passenger airline, Indigo, which he joined in Jan 2022. Welcome, Neetan, on Cutting Chai Stories.
Ashwani, a very good morning. Thank you very much for having me here. And I love the title of your discussion, Cutting Chai. I better grab a tea myself.
It's an absolute delight to have you for this session, Neetan. Let's start off with the questions that we have. CIOs and the teams are the keeper of technology, developing new systems, protecting against risk, controlling expenses, and identifying new value from digital transformations. The buzz around CIOs is that they're technically competent, but socially inept, introverted, and poor communicators. Now, this IT bias may be harsh, unfair, and unproven as well. And I know I wouldn't agree to it. But in your opinion, how do you stress on the importance of people skills, when it comes to people working in the tech space?
Yeah. No, I mean, thank you for that question. Let's just examine it both from the perspective of technology folks as well as the business folks, right? Because it takes two to tango in this transformation journeys, right? And if you look at the technology folks, CIO and below, right, or CTOs and below, yeah, the question to be asked is, what do they aim to do, right? Is it about technology implementation, or is it about adding business value and basically ensuring outcomes happen, right? So that's the first question, right? What is the mission, right? And as you can imagine, the mission is definitely the latter, right? Because just technology without adoption and outcomes, it doesn't give anything, right? So if adoption and business outcomes is what the technology folks are aiming and aspiring to do, then I think it's critical to have those people skills embedded deep into the kind of technology ethos, the organization's ethos at all levels, right? Think of simple things like requirements elicitation, right? This requires kind of listening skills, right? Right after that, you are not really an individual performer. Even if you were doing, forget at the CIO level, even at the coding level, you were engaged with your team. So you need team management skills, right? And then adoption is completely a function of people management, isn't it? It's because finally it's the people who adopt it, right? So I think if you take that perspective from a technology person's perspective and look at the outcomes, people skills are quite important. And in fact, throughout that process, you need to have those skills to be able to manage properly, right? But at the same time, I think we should also examine the business perspective, right? Because too often you will just hear, people talk to me only in technology terms. Yeah. I think the business folks also have to again ask them the question, am I doing a tools implementation with my digital team or technology team, or am I using technology in the digital era as a competitive weapon almost, right? As a strategic lever, yeah? As you can imagine, I think it should be the latter. If it is the latter, I would also suggest on the business colleagues part, a couple of, thoughts there, right? One is to cut the technology teams a bit of slack.
Right.
It does take time for folks to go through this journey and learn it. Yeah. And also, badgering this message home that you need to speak more the business language. I think it's important, but it's also equally important for business not to know coding and not to know Java, but to take that step towards technology folks to understand it enough to know what the strategic impact is, right? You can't just bury your thing in the sand or just hand it over to the technology guys and say, learn Java as well as learn stakeholder management and conflict management and do all of this yourself, right? So I think, these are, I really think it takes two to tango as far as transformation journeys are concerned. And both technology folks as well as business folks need to kind of converge somewhere in the middle, in terms of people and stakeholder management skills.
Absolutely. Right, Neetan. So very well said when the last piece that if I could, just pull out. So one is speak the business language for IT guys and for the business to understand the strategic importance of IT,
Exactly.
So that's also as crucial. So I was talking to one of the CIOs and he told me that CIOs need to be like a turtle, a shell of technical or hard skills, surrounding an underbelly of people skills or soft skills.
That's beautiful. Well put. Yeah.
Right. Neetan, again, there has been a lot of focus around the idea of creative thinking. Many experts state that creative thinking is the lifeblood for an organization. How have you been encouraging it within your organization to derive new insights, new ideas?
Yeah. Again, Ashwini, if I just, I think value and vision, these two dimensions are equally important in a large enterprise, right? Yeah. And, I was part of a journey, when I was in the Middle East, where at the executive level, I saw these two competencies beautifully balanced, right? Because typically what happens is, as individuals, we are either kind of predisposed towards value, ROI, that area of life, or, you're predisposed towards inspiration and visioning and strategy, right? I mean, and you have a good hybrid in between. But, I was part of an organization where two very leaders who were very skewed in one of these two dimensions were nicely orchestrated for the benefit of the organization, right? So I think, creativity, vision, as well as value are both important dimensions to, And, there's a beautiful quote, when it comes to vision and disruption and transformation, right? You might have heard that continuously improving a candle will not result in developing a light bulb, right? Yeah. So I love that, because you have to have the dimension of vision in your organization, right? Then the question arises: creativity, inspiration, vision, innovation. How do you develop it, right? Yeah. So my kind of a few pointers there is, at the 101 level, at the very foundational level, perhaps the first bit is letting just people speak up and be themselves. You feel liberated, right, in that environment at the very core level, right? Because you want people to feel liberated to speak up, to contribute, right? So that's perhaps one leadership trait that we all need to develop. Second is, I think equally important is external stimuli, right? Because sometimes you're so tuned up to your own frame. Yeah, you're carrying on with your work 12 hours, you don't get to know what does inspiration and creativity actually mean. Yeah. So I'll give you an example, right? We used to run in my previous lives, just to anchor this with an example, external stimuli, right?
Right.
I've always run these learning sessions, and through COVID, it was over Teams, where we would do all sorts of crazy things with a wide set of staff, right? So for example, I ran a coding challenge for 200 odd staff online, where we asked them to code. And I say this proudly that because our group was so diversified, from radio jockeys to chefs, there were 200 colleagues who participated. Yeah, and we wrote an AI program which would create after the code was done, it would create a personalized image art form. Yeah, and I can tell you the 200 people took Instagram photos of that art form they created after coding 7 lines of code, right? And would have shared it with all family members, right? So that external stimuli, I think, is quite important. Perhaps the third dimension is we don't somehow dream big enough. Yeah, unleashing, the ability to dream big. Yeah, and dream bold is perhaps another dimension of creativity. And then finally, we live in a world of cloud native and cloud environment, so rapid experimentation, right? So yeah, my view is value and vision, two dimensions of running a great kind of disruption and transformation journey in a large enterprise. Creativity being an important segment of it, and these are some of the tricks I've used in my career to embed it within large teams, right?
And it has worked,
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I mean, yeah, we've had quite a few innovations come through, and the most important thing is people feel liberated and they want to contribute. Yeah.
Absolutely. Right. Right. No, no, yes, absolutely. Wouldn't disagree with you at all on those aspects. Now, creativity at work is again a valuable skill that's necessary. Now, a team is again, every leader's biggest asset. And at the same time, it can also present some of the biggest challenges.
Yeah.
How do you keep your team motivated to keep striving for excellence? And what I would call as ignite sustained motivation throughout.
Well, yeah, thank you for asking that question. You so rightly said it, right, Ashwini? Thank you for that opening sentence. The way we have these leadership mantras that we share within our teams, right? And one of the first ones is that digital transformation is a team sport. Yeah, I mean, and I've realized one other thing, Ashwini, that as you grow up the hierarchy and in the leadership group, yeah, what you do is you end up. So in typical leadership teams, you end up having high individual performance, right? As you can imagine, right? So you get the top creme de la creme, yeah, and they come with years of individual performance, and then somehow to operate them into a team format is perhaps even more challenging and difficult, but then even more important at the leadership level. I think if I was to say this as perhaps one of the most important tasks of a leader, to make sure that the team is formed, a strong team is left behind. Yeah, and that has been my passion for so many years. Not easy to do, but what are some of the things that one does, right? I think first and foremost is, typically I've done this within the first few almost weeks of forming a team. Just a simple framework of what is it that we collectively aspire. A simple one-pager picture, call it purpose, call it mission, vision, whichever term. But it need not be taking you 6-7 months to do, right? Because you could quickly assimilate into what is it that as a team. I think that North Star of what is it as a team is perhaps one of the most important things, right? That's one. Second is, I think nothing gets a team going more than exponential goals.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Because what happens, Ashwini, the other tertiary benefit is that the team is so busy with that exponential goal, right, that they don't really have the time for, politicking and all the unnecessary, gossip that happens, because everybody gets busy. When you set a clear mission and then set exponential goals as a team, you get busy because it's not easy to do. Yeah. Yeah. And I think the third area that I've seen is what happens in the leadership teams is that eventually you operate within your own silos, you're working through. Yeah. Very typically you get into a team format when there is an escalation of some sort. Yeah. So finding kind of work to do together as a team. Yeah. So we run these events which we call, vernissages or town halls, right? So some ancillary work around communication or engagement, around innovation, which the team has to do together.
It's more of collaboration that way.
Yeah, because best way to make a team work together or get together is to get them to work together, yeah. And typically in big silos, you don't end up. So you find place for teams to work together. And then last but not the least, best way to form a team is to spend time together, right? So thrice in a week, leadership team meeting, check-ins, right? Making sure you're spending both social and otherwise, yeah, time together. Yeah. So, to conclude, yeah, these are the 3-4 levers I use typically to build strong teams, which is so important. Transformation is a team sport.
Absolutely. Very well said again. And I'll just summarize, Neetan. So you've touched upon have a purpose, set exponential goals, collaborate, and spend time together. So those are the four takeaways that I have. Neetan, again, you have been in a leadership position for several years. Now, what would be your 2 cents for someone getting into a leadership position for the first time?
Yeah. I'm very passionate about some of these mantras, I call them, right? And if somebody was to have a chat with me on leadership, these would what I would call out, right? Saying me, just be aware of these, maybe follow these principles, if I may say. One is, of course, transformation is a team sport. As you change, as you shape up from managerial to leadership roles, make sure you consciously build teams, right? So that's one. Yeah. Pace over perfection is something that I've learned more so in my previous role when we started the transformation journey. Yeah, because we live in an era where I think the speed is very important, right? So experimentation. So pace over perfection.
Right.
Yeah. Bias to action, right? As a leader, finally, right, you could be analyzing and analyzing and analyzing, but finally it's about action and producing outcomes. So, I would guide people towards, bias to action, right? Then, ability to examine, be perpetually curious and examine everything, right? I think that's a leader's key role, right? Because, things are happening, but, is there a new way of doing stuff, right? So examining everything, and then some simple things like, after maybe 2 emails in a conflict situation, pick up the phone, right? Talk to people.
Absolutely. So you're talking about mantras, Neetan, and
Yeah.
I did view some of your morning mantras that you have
Yeah.
on YouTube. So very interesting, those. It's not consistent, but so interesting.
Yeah.
I know there is this shortage of time for you, but very interesting.
No, thank you, Ashwini. I need to make them a bit more at a particular cadence,
Listen, how do you unwind? Are there any interests, hobbies, or activities that you pursue? And also, if you could share the items on your bucket list that are yet to be fulfilled.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's a good question. Thank you. Yeah, how do I unwind? I mean, I'm a bit of a guy who does various different things during various stages of my life, right? I don't have a lot of planning around what interests will I have. Yeah. So a number of years back, around, I think, 2018, 19, I had, left Emirates after a great journey of 23 years, and 7 years were around a transformation that we had collectively crafted as a team. Yeah.
Right.
So I thought, let me frame that into writing a book, right? So for a number of years, actually, my biggest pastime, my biggest hobby was, trying to consume all my knowledge into the book, which got released, right? So that for a number of years was that, yeah. So typically I read a lot as well. That's a great way to unwind. I'm not able to now read books, actually. That's something I need to rekindle, yeah. But just I'm very curious. So podcast, reading, yes. So my way to unwind is actually going through multiple dimensions in a very serendipity way, right? Yeah. Which also leads me to then answering your second question, which is, do I have a bucket list? And as I was introducing my book in my LinkedIn post, actually, it started by saying I don't actually have a bucket list. It's all a bit, right now, my biggest, wish is that this great company that I've joined, this great country that I have come back to after 27 years, and the mission that has been so graciously handed over to me, right? And authentically, I can, do that for the great person who asked me to come here and do that mission, right? So perhaps if there is one bucket list item top of mind right now, it is that. Yeah.
Absolutely. Really nice to know that, so there is a clear focus that this is what you want to do and achieve here. Right. I guess we have a few more minutes, Neetan. So one question that I had was, the first paycheck is special for everyone. Do you remember receiving your first salary, and how did you utilize the money you received from your first job?
So my mother would always remember this. So I think my first paycheck actually was when I was a student, and I received something out of NCC or whatever. We were in Bombay, yeah. Okay. And I remember having bought some, for sewing, right? For sewing, there is some stuff for my mother, because I had that view that, that is what she does actually. That's what her passion is. Yeah. So she still fondly remembers that. Yeah. So yeah, my first paycheck was a paltry amount, which I received as a student, and I spent it on giving a gift, which I thought was something my mother loves doing, right? Which is sewing. Yeah. Yeah. But in general, that kind of set the goal for me. I love giving gifts to people. So most of my salary, if that's one way for me to unwind, which is go and shop for other people and, my loved and dear ones, to give them gifts. Yeah.
Absolutely. Really, really nice to know that, Neetan. So yes, we all have that tendency to, give it to someone. So that's always there.
Yeah.
Especially with the first salary.
Yeah. What did you do with yours, Ashwini?
I did the same, Neetan. So I bought a shirt for my father, a sari for my mother, and I got myself a guitar. So that's what I did.
Yeah, that's amazing. So do you play a lot or?
I do. I'm a self-learner, but yes, I still continue whenever I have time. I do that.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Right. One final question here, Neetan. On an individual level, we all undergo tough times and failures in life. Now, going through such a time of unrest also leaves, some lessons that stay with us for life. What has been such an instance in your life? If you could share, and what did it teach you?
Yeah, I mean, there are a lot of cliches around setbacks and failures, right? What doesn't kill you make you stronger? Yeah. I wouldn't use those. If I may, I'll just describe my own journeys. I had one particular incident which lasted for a fair bit of time. It was a bit of a personal, deep issue that we as a family faced. Yeah, and if I just reflect on it very honestly, it was really tough. That it went for a long time. It was very tough. I did not know how will I get out of it. Yeah, that issue, right? It related to some personal loved one, right? And I guess just sharing what I kept thinking, couple of thoughts there through that journey. Yeah, that journey is always tough. I can tell you, right? No amount of cliches really help you through that journey. You just have to personally experience it. But just to share some learning, one was, I kept thinking, what is the worst case? That was one. And, I kept thinking of the worst case and how to deal with it if it happens. And then the second learning was that there will be a good time. It never lasts forever. Yeah. So these were the two things that got me through it. But if I reflect back on that time, I must say that it did make me a bit more resilient and a bit more robust and a bit not anti-fragile, perhaps that's a too strong a word, but a bit more, resilient to taking these setbacks, right? So that was something very deeper. And then, career-wise, I remember once, I was aspiring for a particular role that did not happen. Of course, like any human being, I went through my own denial. But the way I got out of that, I don't know, I also learned that this is what I would do. You don't know till you hit it, right? I actually got quite excited and I said, okay, what is it that I need to do to improve to make sure I get that role the next time, right? So I actually found myself being so passionate about improving myself, right, from that setback. Yeah. So I'm just sharing, exactly what kind of transpired with me in these two cases, a bit of a professional setback and a personal setback. It's never really easy. These are all, kind of personal journeys. But of course, the net result is you do learn, you do become a bit more resilient as you go through these setbacks and failures.
Absolutely, Neetan. This is a short conversation with you, but whatever I could gather was, one, you've kept your curiosity alive. You've never stopped learning. You reflect, and you've been resilient. So that's what I could summarize through this short discussion that I could we could have together. Thank you for your time, and thank you for your willingness to share your experiences and lessons learned. I guess your insights have been incredibly enlightening, and I truly stand inspired with this conversation.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time, Ashwini, for a great conversation. Thank you.
Thank you.